of chanting the holy names. Then there is second part to Hare Krishna. Somehow I got disconnected. So we were discussing the aspect of Poshanam and how this canto can be divided into two parts. One is talking about in the first three chapters the glories of Bhakti, especially highlighting the chanting of the holy names, in which the story of Ajamil is described. And the second part of this canto is after hearing about Visarga, descendants of Swayambhu Manu, now our Parikshit Maharaj wants to hear more about creation in detail. So then it starts describing about various other progenitions, especially of Daksha's. Daksha's birth from Prachetas, his austerities, etc. is described. And within that, we will see the different episodes of uh, Chitraketu Maharaj, Indra, who takes birth as Vritrasur, Diti's pastime, etc. So that will be seen. So these are the two main uh, aspects which are being talked about in this canto. So Poshanam is one of the themes of this canto, which highlights how Lord gives protection. So keeping that in mind, we will be able to understand this whole picture. So we'll go to the first chapter. So Srila Prabhupada also right in the beginning is mentioning this aspect. So he's saying that first chapter is talking about the history of life of Ajamil. So Prabhupada also is mentioning about how there are 10 subject matters: creation, sarga, visarga, the sthanam. But having described about these three aspects, now in 6th canto, Poshanam of the Lord is being described. So we'll go to the first verse. So Parikshit Maharaj is mentioning, Shri Parikshit Uvacha Nivritti Marga Kathita Ado Bhagavata Yatha Krama Yogopalabdhena Brahmanayad Asam Shrithi. Here he's saying that, oh my Lord, he's basically in these few verses, our Parikshit Maharaj is kind of encouraging Shukdev Goswami and thanking him. So he's expressing his gratefulness and then asking a question. So first he says, you have already explained how one can progress to liberation, Nivritti Marg, gradually and get liberated along with Lord Brahma. So this you have described in second canto. So he is acknowledging. So when there is a conversation going on between the speaker and the hearer, so speaker will get the strength or encouragement when the hearer actually congratulates or acknowledges that this is what I have heard or understood up till now. So the speaker gets faith that, yeah, what I'm saying is being heard. Like if you remember in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya receives Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri in his house, and he feels he's a sannyasi, he's a young sannyasi, and he should be, if he wants to continue sannyas, he should be very much in Vedanta, he should be very much educated. So he asks that I want to teach you Vedanta, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hears. And for many days he's speaking, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not speak anything. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is perplexed. Arey, you are not asking any question, neither you are acknowledging whether you have heard or not heard. So please, so when there's a conversation going on between two personalities, so one who is hearing or is the recipient, he needs to acknowledge that this is what I have understood till now, and based on this, I have these doubts, or I have these further questions, or these further clarifications which I need to ask. So in this particular canto, right at the beginning, Parikshit Maharaj is mentioning, "Oh, I am grateful that you have already explained this aspect about Sarga." Then he says that how you have further uh, how by pravritti mark elevation to heavenly planets one will keep on wandering in this material creation. So how this heavenly planets, um, so nivritti marg you have talked about, pravritti marg you have talked about, and so nivritti is more of liberation, getting detached from this material world, but pravritti is getting attached because of being connected, because of having certain desires to be fulfilled. So that you have also described in third canto. So Prabhupada is explaining about these two different paths of pravritti and nivritti marg. Then in third verse, you have also described about varieties of hellish life resulting from impious activities and about first manvantara. So that also you have described in to me. So that was described in fourth canto and fifth canto. Hellish life is described in fifth canto, and about the manvantara, first manvantara is described in the fourth canto. So that also you have described. So whatever he has heard till now in second, third, fourth, and fifth cantos, he's acknowledging that. So then he says that dynasties of Priyavrat Maharaj and Uttanapahat Maharaj and all the plains with details of inhabitants you have described. So Priyavrat Maharaj we saw in fifth canto, Uttanapad Maharaj's dynasty is mentioned in fourth canto, and various 14 planetary systems, how different devotees are residing. So that has been also described. So I'm very grateful for for to you for giving me such in-depth knowledge, understanding, and how Lord is taking care of each and every living entity. So in the next verse, which is like the first section of this chapter, so for 1 to 6, Parikshit Maharaj is expressing his gratefulness, and then he is asking the question in the sixth verse by telling, Aduneha Mahabhaga Yatheva Narakannara Nanugra Yatananya Tanme Vyakhyatum Arhasi. So he's saying, hey, Shukdev Goswami, you are very fortunate, you are very opulent, but having heard about the precarious condition of living entities who have to suffer in hellish life for a long time, and it seems they don't have any support from which they can come out. So tell me how human beings may be saved from having to enter hellish conditions in which they suffer terrible pains. So Mahabhaga. So he's addressing Shukdev Goswami as Mahabhaga, and Prabhupada is, what is the meaning of Mahabhaga? One who is opulent and fortunate. Why? Because he's opulent with the Krishna Katha, opulence of Krishna Katha you have, and you're very fortunate. Why? Because you have heard it from your spiritual master, and therefore you are able to give me that also. So you are very opulent and fortunate. So Narakan, so he's saying Narakan Nara na anugra yathana niyat. So those who will enter into hellish conditions, these human beings, nana ugra, because and there will be very nana ugra yatanan. Yatanan means suffering. So there will be a lot of yatana they will have to go through. So please describe how they can be saved from this situation. So if you think about this situation, this question actually highlights the character of Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj, he's been cursed to die in 7 days, and it's mentioned he will be bitten by Takshaka snake. So now we have reached to the point of sixth canto. So maybe second day is going on. And generally, when a conditioned soul goes through suffering, the whole mind space, the consciousness, the chetna, the everything is on oneself. Like even if we are walking and we get a pinprick in our some portion of the body, our whole consciousness is affected and we are focused on that particular place where the pain is coming from. And Parikshit Maharaj, he knows for certain that he has been cursed to die in 7 days. Even still, after hearing the condition of people who enter hellish planets and suffer there, he's not thinking about himself that, oh, I am about to die. He's not like perplexed, or he's not miserable, thinking that I'll be dying. But he's thinking of welfare of other living entities. So he's thinking how. So he's not in his aham mameti consciousness. He's thinking about how these people can be saved. So it highlights the character, the consciousness of Parikshit Maharaj, which is very beautiful, that he is himself on the verge of the most dreadful suffering a living entity faces in this world, of death. But still, he is interested in, or he is feeling the pain of those who are suffering in the hellish planets. So that is the nature of a Vaishnava. Para dukha dukhi. So he feels for others' pain. So that is highlighted in this particular verse by this question. So Prabhupada also is beautifully expressing the same mood, and he's saying even Prahlad Maharaj has mentioned, my Lord, I have no personal problems. Why I don't have any personal problems? For I have learned how to glorify your transcendental qualities and thus enter a trance of ecstasy. I do have a problem, however, for I am simply thinking of these rascals and fools who are busy with Maya Sukha, temporary happiness, without knowledge of devotional service. So for a devotee, he is not pained, or he doesn't suffer because of his own self. He is happy because he is engrossed in trance, remembering the Guna Leela, the Nam Guna Leela Dham of the Lord. But he is pained seeing the suffering, or how people are engrossed in this world, and that gives him pain. So this is the problem faced by Vaishnava. Prabhupada says a Vaishnava is fully taking shelter of the personality of Godhead, so he has no problems. But he has his inner mood of compassion. He feels of the suffering of other living entities. So therefore, this gives rise to the question in his heart, which he is very, very compassionately asking or putting forward in front of Shukdev Goswami. So the real suffering or problem is lack of Krishna consciousness. So to convince them of their next life is very difficult in this world. People are engrossed thinking that I am this body, and accordingly they are suffering. So after hearing this question, Shukdev Goswami tests Parikshit Maharaj first before establishing the position of bhakti. So from 7th verse till 19th verse. So he will first test and then establish position of bhakti in reply to the question asked by Parikshit Maharaj. So the first section or first few verses, he gives solution of karma kanda. That if one does some papa, how he can be relieved of that papa. So solution he gives is karma kanda. So he tells that one should do prayashchita, atonement. So he is telling that how by doing atonement, one can be freed of sin. And if one does not perform atonement, definitely he has to suffer terrible suffering. So this is the solution he gives. And further he extends it saying, one should undergo atonement in proportion to the sins committed. So if one has committed a heavy sin, then the atonement should be more grave, more which should bring in more tapasya, etc., etc. So it should be in proportion. So in that mood, it should be done. He gives the analogy: as an expert physician diagnoses and treats a disease according to its gravity. So if one has small cough and cold, then you just take one pill and it can be treated. But if one has a very big disease, then the treatment process is longer duration. There are many processes involved, many medicines involved. So depending on severity, doctor gives medicine. Similarly, atonement has to be dependent on severity of the sins committed. So this is mentioned in Dharma Shastras, especially as seen like the Manu Samhita, etc. So Prabhupada is giving that example. So this is the solution which Shukdev Maharaj is telling. But Parikshit Maharaj, being a genuine Vaishnav and having proper understanding of scriptures, he actually passes the test. He says, Shri Raja Uvacha Drishtra Shrutabhyam Yat Papam Jananan Api Atmanohitam Karoti Bhuyo Vivasha Prashchitam Atho Katham. So he's saying that Drishtra Shrutabhyam Yat Papam. People see, they also hear. Drishtra, by seeing. Shrutabhyam, by hearing from scriptures, law books. So people still perform papam. Okay? So one may know that sinful activity is injurious and he sees criminal being punished, but still karoti bhuyo vivashaha, because he's vivasha. He is being forced by his lower nature, by the modes in which he is. So he sees, but he still acts. So then, what is the benefit of prayashchita? Prayashchita atho katham. Nevertheless, in spite of such knowledge, one is forced to commit sins again and again, even after performing acts of atonement. Then, what is the value of such atonement? Why? Because one does some sin, he does atonement, but then again he will be forced by his lower nature to act, and this cycle will continue. So, does it actually help? Parikshit Maharaj says, no. My observation indicates that this will not work. The criminals, after getting punished, their mentality doesn't change and they again commit sins. They again commit criminal acts. So however many times he's punished, he still commits sins. So then he gives the example in this verse. Kvachin nivartate bhadrat, kvachin charati tatpuna, prayashchitam atho apartham, manye kunjara shauchavat. So manye, I consider it's like kunjara shauchavat. Kunjara shauchavat means, kunjara means an elephant. Shauchavat means taking bath. So it's like elephant bathing. Why? Because one commits a sin and he pardons himself or does some atonement, prayashchita. But again, when he comes, he again does sin. Like an elephant which enters a water body to relieve himself, to clean himself, enters, take a nice bath. But as soon as he comes out, he again rolls himself in the mud on the banks of the water body. So, and he throws the sand or the dust on his own body. So what is the purpose of such bathing? Because as soon as he comes out, he again makes himself dirty. So atonement of prayashchit is like that. So I don't subscribe to this solution. So then in 11 to 14th verses, after understanding that Parikshit Maharaj does not accept karma kanda vichar of atonement, he gives the solution of jnana from 11 to 14. So where in the 11th verse he says, Shukdev Maharaj, real atonement is enlightenment in perfect knowledge. So what is real atonement is, if one gets enlightened in the perfect knowledge, that will actually increase one's glory. So Prabhupada is also mentioning, progressing from Karma Kanda to Jnana Kanda, he is proposing Paishchita Vimarshana. That is, real atonement is in full knowledge. So one, when he gets knowledge, then he will have proper understanding, and that knowledge will give him proper direction. So then he will be saved from sinning. So that is the solution which Shukdev Maharaj is proposing in this 11th. And then 12th, he says, as by eating good food, no disease will come. Similarly, by following rules of jnana, he gradually progresses towards liberation. So if one has cultivated jnana, it's equivalent to eating good food. If one is eating healthy food, he will not be affected by disease. Nashnatah pathyam evanam vyadhyo abhibhavanti hi evam niyamakrit rajan shanai shemaya kalpate. So Ashnatah means one who eats. Pathyam evanam. So one who eats suitable food. Pathyam. Vyadhayo abhibhavantihi. So he vyadi. He will not be affected by disease. Abhibhavantihi. He will not be overcome by it. Evam niyamakrit rajan shanai shemaya kalpate. So if one follows the regulative principles which are mentioned by Jnana Shastra, he will gradually progress towards liberation from material contamination. He will get proper understanding, proper knowledge, and that will protect him from acting in sinful tendencies. So, like, as we know, this analogy of, especially in Ayurveda, when a physician, Ayurvedic physician, prescribes the medicine, the most critical factor is the pathya. So here it's mentioned, if you see, na ashnata pathyam eva annam. So if one has proper pathya, so in Ayurveda they say, if the medicine will have proper effect, full effect, only when the pathya is followed. Pathya means the doctor will also tell what to eat, what not to eat, when to eat, how to eat, different ways. So if that is followed, then actually food itself acts as medicine, and medicine on top will actually rejuvenate the body. So here, if one has proper knowledge, proper pathya, then he can be freed from disease. Like the knowledge will free us from sinful tendencies. So that is the analogy he is, our Shukdev Maharaj is proposing to Parikshit Maharaj in this 12th verse. Then further he says, these sins are like tapasa brahmacharyena chmena cha damena cha tyagena satya shochabhyam yamena niyamena va dehavag buddhijam dhira dharmagya shraddhayanvita shipanti agham mahad api venu gulmam ivanagaha. So he's telling different prescriptions for this, that how, but these sins are like dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire of jnana, although their root remain to grow again at the first opportunity. So these are the different aspects: tapasa, brahmacharena, shamena, damena, tyagena, satyam, shauchabhyam, yamena, niyamena cha. So all these different things one has to undergo: control senses, give charity, be truthful, be clean, be non-violent, follow all the rules, chant the holy names. So if one does that, a sober and faithful person who knows the religious principle is temporarily purified of all sins performed by his body, words, and minds. So the comparison is given like in a jungle, in a forest, there are a lot of leaves which fall off the trees, creepers, and there are bamboos which are lying and they are within. And when there's a fire, they get burnt, the leaves. So it's like the sins in the heart are burnt. But in this analogy, the root still remains because they're underground. And when there is proper sunlight, proper rain, water, it will again grow back. So by practicing this jnana principles, one may be temporarily relieved of these sinful papa tendencies. But this will not give complete eradication. So Prabhupada is explaining that aspect. So Parikshit Maharaj even rejects this proposal also of Jnana Kanda as a solution for this. So Prabhupada is explaining that aspect. And then understanding the mind of Parikshit Maharaj, then from next verse, 16 to 19 especially, he establishes the superiority of bhakti. केचित् केवलया भक्त्या वासुदेव परायणा अघम धुन्वन्ति कास्नेया निहारम इव भास्कर. केचित् केवलया भक्त्या. If one is engaged in kevala bhakti means unalloyed devotional service, which has no tinge of jnana, karma, etc. To whom? Vasudeva parayana. To Lord Vasudev and parayana, complete dependence on him. Agam dhunvanti katsneya niharam eva bhaskara. So here the comparison is given to, there is like a fog like situation, and so one does not have clear vision, but as soon as the sun rises, then just by one ray the whole fog is dissipated. So the chanting of the holy names or devotional service to the Lord is compared to the rising of the sun, the first ray itself. Even by chanting one holy name, chanting or taking shelter of the Lord, in this aspect, one will be free from the sinful tendencies to the root. Because when the sun rises, the sun rays come into picture, they permanently destroy the fog with no chance of it appearing again. So that is being described. So that is the beauty of bhakti. Why? Because it takes one to transcendental platform, beyond sattva, rajas, tama, beyond even sattva, shuddha sattva. So one is freed of sinful tendencies and he is relieved. So Prabhupada is mentioning different verses to substantiate. So this is a very beautiful verse which is explaining the glories of bhakti and how the holy name or Kechit Kevala Bhakti. If one takes to the platform of Kevala Bhakti, Vasudeva Parayana. So what is the effect? So that is mentioned. Aham Dhunvanti Katsneya Niharam Iva Bhaskara. So it's uprooted to the root, the tendency of sinning, of papa. So then 16th verse further is mentioned that if a sinful person engages in service of bona fide devotee of the Lord and thus learns how to dedicate his life onto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, he can be completely purified. So one has to take shelter of a devotee of the Lord. Na tatha hi aghavan rajan huyeta tapa adibhi yatha Krishna arpita prana tat purusha nisevya. So Krishna arpita prana, of such a devotee, if one engages in service, he will be actually freed from this sinful tendency. So that is mentioned in this verse, highlighting again the glory of bhakti. Then next verse is mentioning the path followed by devotees is most auspicious and free from fear, and it is authorized by Shastras. So if one follows in footsteps of devotees, it is very auspicious path, which is free from all kind of fear, and it is also uh, ascertained by Shastras. Sadrichino hi ayam loke pantha shema akuto bhaya sushila sadhavo yatra narayana parayana. So sushila sadhavo yatra, and so so the path followed by pure devotees, they are sushila sadhavo, who are well behaved and fully endowed with the best qualification, is certainly the most auspicious path. Shema akuto bhaya. Shema, it's the most auspicious. It prevents, it is free from fear, and it is authorized by scriptures. Akuto bhaya. And sadrichino hi aham loke. So like that. So this is the beauty of this bhakti path. Then in 18th verse, to further collaborate, he gives an analogy. As a liquor pot cannot be purified even by washing with river waters, similarly, non-devotees cannot be purified by process of atonement. So if like there is a earthen pot in which liquor is stored, and even you clean it, you throw the liquor, you clean it, you um, put soap, brushes it with the the cleaning vessel scrubber, but still the smell, the scent remains, and you put water again, it will get that stench or that smell will be there. So atonement is like that. Sura kumbham ivapagaha. So one who is not a devotee of the Lord. Narayana para anmukham. He's not taking shelter of the Lord. He's para anmukham. He is like a non-devotee who is facing away from the Lord. He cannot be purified, O King Rajendra, because it is like liquor pot, which will still have the stench. And in 19th, very beautifully, further mention Sakrinmanah Krishna Padaravindayo Niveshitam Tad Gunaragiyeriha Nate Yamam Pasha Pritascha Tadbadhan Sapne Api Pashyanti Hichina Nishkrita. So how in this world, person who have not even once surrendered completely onto Lord's lotus feet, and who have become attracted to his name, fame, form, qualities, and pastimes, are completely freed from all sinful actions. Even in dreams, such surrender souls do not see Yamraj or his order carriers. So it's mentioned here, Sakrin Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo. Sakrin means even once. If Mana, mind, is Krishna Padara Vindayo, is engaged or is taken shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, Niveshitam. It's completely Niveshitam. It's completely surrendered. That Guna Ragi Yer Iha, in Lord's qualities, Guna, name, fame, paraphernalia, etc. Guna Ragi. Nate Yamam Pasha Vrita. Yamam Pash. He will not be affected by the superintendent of death, Yamraj, those who carry ropes to catch sinful persons. Vritas Chatad Bhatan. They order carriers of Yamraj. They will not come to catch that sinful person. Even in their dreams, Sapne api pashyanti hi chirna nishkita. In their dreams also, they will not have such bad dreams. Why? Because taking shelter of Lord through the process of bhakti, kevalaya bhakti, makes one completely fearless. Completely, he is in the hands of the Lord. Completely surrendered to the will of the Lord. So that makes him completely purified. So this is the right kind of atonement one has to do. Prabhupada is quoting Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Raja, that Aham Tom Sarva Pape Moksha Eshami Ma Shuchaha, that one who takes shelter of me, he is freed from all Sarva Papa. So not only is one freed from Papa, but he is getting such higher enjoyment, such higher engagement, that the tendency for Papa is also completely eradicated from the heart. So that is the beauty, or that is the nature of bhakti in comparison to jnana and karma, which was mentioned previously. So that is being that is what actually Parikshit Maharaj wanted to hear when he asked this question. And Shukdev Goswami tested him by giving first information of Karma Kanda, then Jnana Kanda. But Parikshit Maharaj feels no, this is not the solution. Please tell me the ultimate solution. Don't just give me some temporary understanding just to, uh, goody goody feeling that, oh, by doing atonement, you can be freed. Prabhupada is quoting so many other verses also. Apichet suduracharo bhajante mamananya bhag. That how taking shelter of the Lord, neha vikramanashusti, that how one can be freed from the sinful tendency. Also, not just sin, but sinful tendency by taking shelter of the Lord. Just even once, and akutobhem, it will free one from all kinds of fear. Prabhupada says, therefore, one should adhere to lotus feet of Krishna very tightly and serve him under the direction of the spiritual master. Thus, in all conditions, one will be akutobhem, free from fear. So, this is the significance or importance of this bhakti yoga. So, that is highlighted. Sakrinmana Krishna Padara Vindayo Niveshitam Tad Gunaragiyir Iha Nate Yamam Pasha Britascha Tadbhadan Sapnyapi Pashyanti Hi China Nishkritaha. So this is mentioned. Now, because Shukdev Goswami, he is giving a siddhanta, a principle. Now, Parikshit Maharaj may ask, can you substantiate this siddhanta by some incident, some story? So therefore, Shukdev Goswami Maharaj starts narrating the pastime of Ajamil, that how a very sinful person, he also got delivered by chanting the holy names. So from 20 to 29, how Ajamil chanted holy name at the time of death. So that is mentioned. We'll quickly take that. So 20th verse mentions that how I will tell you an old story of Ajamil, where there was a conversation between Vishnu Dutas and Yamadutas. So two opposing parties, one is for punishment, one is for Lord's own Parshad, to actually take one out of the cycle of birth and death. Ajamil, so then the brief history is mentioned, he married a prostitute and lost all his good qualities because of her association. He committed many sins to maintain his family. 22nd verse mentions. 23rd he mentions he was spending time in abominable sinful activities, and being such engaged, he forget how time was passing. And 88 years of his life passed in such a fashion. So among tens, he had, and in this time period, he gave birth to 10 sons through this prostitute. And the youngest child he named Narayan, who was very dear to him, because generally the youngest child is very dear. So he named him Narayan. And Ajamil enjoyed Narayan's activities, movements, and broken languages. Small children, they are very attractive because they are very innocent. So he was always engaged in taking care of his child. He would call him lovingly, Narayan, come here. Narayan, eat this. Narayan, do this. As a loving father, even though he's so aged, 88, but he has a small child. But as the nature of this world is, that death arrived, the time of the completing the activities in this body for Ajamil. So he, being attached to his youngest son, was exclusively thinking of Narayan, his son. So when he saw Yamaduta had come to take him to hell, he was extremely bewildered. He began to call his son loudly by his name, Narayan, please come help me, or Narayan, please go away from here. Some very ugly looking creatures have come, black in color, etc., etc. So he was crying and he was chanting name of Narayan. But he was chanting the name of his son Narayan. But his good fortune was that he had named his son after Lord Narayan's name. And after this, because it was the time of his departure and he had done so many sins, Yamadutas had come to snatch his soul and make him suffer for his sinful reactions. But because he chanted Narayan's name, so 30th verse to 55th verse mentions about the conversation. So how Yamadutas have arrived at the scene and Vishnu Dutas also come. And Vishnu Dutas stop. No, you cannot take this. He is a very good person. Say, good person? Yamaduta say, he's not a good person. He has done so many crimes. He is so papi. He's done so many sins. But said, no, you don't know. He has chanted the name of Narayan. So then Yamadutas, they are first were perplexed. Yamadutas. They have never seen Vishnu Dutas before. And they thought their master was the highest authority. So who are these people who are stopping us? We thought we are the servants of the highest authority, decision-making body. So in the 32nd verse, the Yamadutas are asking, who are you, sirs? And what is your audacity to challenge the jurisdiction of Yamaraj, our master, on whose behalf we have come to execute the orders and punish this Ajamil? Whose servants are you? Where have you come from? Why are you forbidding us to touch the body of Ajamil? We cannot ascertain who you are and what gives you such strength. Who is your master? On whose basis you are driving such strength? Our master is Yamaraj, as they mentioned in the previous verse. Then 34 to 36, Yamadutas describe form of Vishnudita and ask why they were being obstructed. So they are further asking about the description of why they are being stopped from executing their responsibilities. So then in 37th verse, Vishnudutas replied with voices as deep as sound of rumbling clouds. So because they are servants of Lord Vishnu and Lord Vishnu's voice is grave, so they are also speaking in such grave voice. What is making you stop us? So in this way, they are asking. So then 38th verse, Vishnudita asked to the Yamadutas, okay, you are telling your identity as the servants of Yamaraj. So if you are servants of Yamaraj, please tell us the meaning of religious principles and symptoms of irreligion. If you are having such high connection, so you must be very clear about religious principles. What are the symptoms of irreligion? So can you please explain to us? Kindly please explain. What is the process of punishing others? In 39th verse they ask, who are the actual candidates of punishment? So how you punish others and how you decide who is candidate for punishment. So in this way, they are asking Yamadutas, please explain. Then Yamadutas start answering in 40th verse onwards. So their first answer is to ascertain what is dharma and adharma is. Veda pranihito dharmo hi adharmas tad viparyaya. Vedo Narayana Sakshat Swayambhu iti Shushruma. Veda Pranihito Dharma. So what is mentioned or prescribed in Vedas, that is dharma. Hi adharmas tad viparyaya. And whatever is viparyaya, against that principle, is adharma. So they're saying it's very clear. Whatever is mentioned in scriptures, we go by scriptures. What is mentioned in scriptures is dharma. And whatever is against is adharma. So we accept that principle. And Vedo Narayana Sakshat. Why? Because Veda is directly originated from the Supreme Lord Narayan. They are self-born. And this Swayambhu iti Shushruma, and this we have heard from our master Yamraj. So that is how they first of all try to answer that what is the authority or how to ascertain what is dharma and adharma. So then 41st verse, they further say Narayana is the cause of entire cosmic manifestation and he controls it by modes. So that is how I understand. Yena swa dhamni ami bhava raja sattva tamomayaha guna nama kriya rupe bhavyante yatha tatha. That how Narayan Yena. So Yena, Narayan is actually the controller and he controls by three modes. And then in 42nd verse, they tell that have you got any witness? Yeah, we have got witness. Suryo, Agni, Kham, Marud, Deva, Soma, Sandhya, Hani, Disha, Kam Kahu, Swayam Dharma iti, Hi Eta, Dahi, Dehasya, Sakshina. So these are the Sakshi. So they are our Sakshi. They are always witnessing. One may say, Are you have any Sakshi? Yeah, we have Surya, we have Sun, we have Agni, we have fire, we have Kham, we have sky, we have Marud, we have air, we have Deva, demigods, Soma, the moon, Sandhya, the evening, Hani, Disha, we have directions, we have day and night, water, land, etc. All these are the Sakshi, which actually, and the super soul himself, they are actually the Sakshi who can ascertain or who tell who has done what activity, and on the basis of which we ascertain that he is to be punished or he has to be rewarded. So everything is having a proper record. 43rd verse, further they mention those confirmed by these witnesses, the above mentioned witnesses, are liable to be punished, and everyone is subjected to punishment according to one's sinful actions. So if in the court of law also, you need a witness. Oh, have anyone seen this person committing the crime, or is there any proof? So he's saying, yeah, we have these witnesses, and whoever is confirmed by these witnesses is punished according to these sinful activities. So all humans within this material world are in three modes and can't avoid sinful actions. Therefore, all are punishable. So whoever is in so it's like in a jail. Why one is put in jail? Because he has done some crime and he has criminal tendency. So similarly, Yamaduta is saying in this world, people are of criminal tendency, of wanting to enjoy, having been engrossed or having been completely under the control of three modes. So they have sinful tendencies and therefore all are punishable. In proportion, in the next verse, 45th verse, in proportion to religious and irreligious actions, one will either enjoy or suffer in the next life. So whether one is doing some religious or irreligious, and the proportion of their religious and irreligious activity, that will determine their enjoyment or suffering. So three kinds of life exist due to three modes. So one is peaceful, restless, foolish, happy, unhappy, mixed, religious, irreligious, or semi-religious. So people in this next life also there will act as similar. So people who are affected by goodness, they will be peaceful. Those who are affected by passion, they will be restless. Those who are affected by ignorance, they will be foolish. Some will be happy, unhappy, mixed. So like that. So everyone is undergoing this suffering. So in the 47th verse, they give analogy that present springtime indicates the nature of springtimes in past and future. Similarly, life of happiness, distress indicates religious and irreligious activities of one's past and future lives. So what one is undergoing now will give an indication of what kind of lifestyle one had previously, which is fructifying in today's life or today's suffering or happiness, and what kind of lifestyle we have now will actually result in our future happiness or suffering. This is very logical. Like in spring, one can understand what kind of climate was before and what is coming up next. So then 40th verse, Yamraj observes the past activities of a jiva like a Paramatma. So they're saying Yamraj is actually having that, he's being endowed with the potency of the Lord, that he can actually witness all the activities of the living entity. Then in 49th verse, they mention because of loss of memory, one cannot able to ascertain past or future lives and identifies oneself with present body. So one may say, oh, why are you punishing me? I don't remember committing this sin. On what basis you are punishing me? I never committed any sin in this life, and I cannot recall any sins I have committed. No, as a sleeping person accepts body in dream to be himself. So in a person who is sleeping, he feels that that is my only situation, but he has another situation which is real, which is his wakeful state. But a sleeping person feels that the body he has in the dream is the real state, is the only state, or is the only real state. But he has his wakeful state also. So similarly, Jiva is not just this body. He is transmigrating from one body to another. And what was his desires, what his actions were in the previous life will determine his the happiness and distress he accumulates or he faces in this life. So further they mention in 50th verse how Jiva enjoys multi-world with 16 elements, 5 senses of perception, 5 working senses, 5 objects of senses, and the mind. 51st verse they further mention how subtle body caused by 3 modes of nature is composed of insurmountable desires. It causes a miserable condition of transmigration for living entity into animal, human, demigod, different bodies. Where what is the condition? The living entities experience fear, lamentation, jubilation, different conditions. They go through these different kinds of situations. 52nd, another analogy is given as a silkworm is entrapped in cocoon made from its own saliva. So silkworm makes a cocoon of its own saliva and gets trapped in it. Similarly, the living entity is trapped by its own fruitive activity. He thinks that I am enjoying, he thinks that I am creating a better future, but it is leading him to get entangled by his own fruitive actions. So what he feels will give me happiness is actually entangling him. So that he cannot understand. His own activities are entangling him, is going to result in painful condition. 53rd verse further is mentioned that one is forced to act at every moment by one's natural tendency created by moods. So one is forced to act, like even Arjuna is mentioning in Bhagavad Gita, Balavad, as if by force I am made to act. So what to do? Since Krishna says, Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajoguna Samad, Mahashano Mahapapma, Yuddha Iha Verinam, that how this Kam and Krodh are like the enemies of the living entity, and they actually force a living entity to act in certain ways because they are under the control of modes. 54th verse, they further said, fruitive activities are the unseen cause of fulfillment of desire of living entity and the root for one's different activities. So the fruitive mentality. So, so the living entity has a desire to enjoy, to accumulate in this world, and that is the reason for it getting affected in this world. And 55th verse, they say further, association of material nature keeps living entity in awkward position. But if in human life, if one learns to associate with the Supreme Lord or devotees, one can overcome this situation. So this material nature, the uh, uh, constant association of this material nature, the material modes, keeps the living entity entangled, and he further increases his material desires and is put in awkward condition. But if one chooses to associate with Lord, associate with devotees, he can overcome such position. So then 56 to 68, it's mentioned about how Ajamil fell down from his position and who was actually Ajamil. What was his previous position? So that is described. That who actually he was and how he came to such position. So so what are the qualities of Ajamil that are mentioned in 56th and 57th verse? So it's mentioned that how Ajamil was a very, very nice Brahmana who had very nice qualities. Ayam hi shruto sampanna shila vrata gunalaya vrita vrato vritur danta satyavak mantra vikshu shuchi guru agni atithi वृद्धानां शुश्रूषुर अहंकारतः सर्वभूता सुहित साधुर मितवाक अनसूयकः. So it's mentioned that in the beginning, this Ajamil was actually a very nice Brahmana with such beautiful qualities he had. It's mentioned that he was well versed in Vedas, he was having such good character, he was like a reservoir of good character, good conduct, good qualities, very mild, gentle, he could control his mind and senses. So all these are qualities are mentioned. So it's not that from the beginning Ajamil was a dharmic. No, he had a good upbringing, he had a dharmic upbringing. But on the way home, it's mentioned in next two verses, when he was collecting flowers, fruits, flowers, etc., he actually saw a very ugly scene where a prostitute was being embraced by a drunkard person, a Shudra, and his mind got agitated. So when Ajamil saw Shudra embracing, his dormant lusty desire got awakened, which was there in his heart. So that is mentioned in these few verses, and that led to him becoming uh, the the tendency to enjoy, the tendency to fulfill the material desires. That seed was planted, or it was uncovered. The dormant desire was uncovered because of it getting uh, he getting the senses getting in touch with sense object. So it's mentioned in 62nd verse. स्तभ्याम् आत्मात्मानं यावत् सत्वं यथा श्रुतुं न शशाक समाधातुं मनो मदनवेपितम्. So with the help of Shastric knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires, but he failed to control his mind. So very importantly, it's mentioned, Stambhyan Atma Atmanam. Stambhyam. He is trying to control Stambhyam. By what? Atmana, by his intelligence. Atmanam, by his mind. So he's trying. Yat Sattvam, as far as what will. Yat Shrutam, where remembering the instructions of celibacy, brahmacharya, na shashaka samadhutam, but na shashaka, he was not able to restrain himself. Mano madena veputam. His mind was captivated by madana. Madana means the cupid or lusty desire. Vepitum got agitated. So he had knowledge, he had good character, he had good upbringing, but still the knowledge itself was not sufficient to restrain him, and he got carried away. So, but in bhakti, because one takes shelter of just not knowledge, but the desire to serve and please the Lord, he takes shelter of the Lord. Even such tendencies can be overcome by remembering the Lord, taking shelter of Guru, like that. So Prabhupada is saying, thus after seeing a man embracing a young woman and practically doing everything required for sex life, even a fully qualified Brahmana, as described above, could not control his lusty desire and restrain himself from pursuing them. So Prabhupada says, because of the force of materialistic life, to maintain self-control is extremely difficult unless one is specifically under the protection of Supreme Lord through devotional service. One does not take shelter of the Lord under his protection. It's very difficult to be protected. And in this way, 63rd verse mentions Ajamil lost all his good sense. He started thinking of prostitute always. His mind was completely captivated by that prostitute. And he begged the prostitute and he left his parents, the good wife, chaste wife, and started living with the prostitute. He gave a Brahminical culture. He spent money which he had inherited from his father on the prostitute. He was victimized by lust, 65th verse mentioned, and he engaged in all kinds of sinful activities. He gave up his beautiful wife. So he was bereft of all intelligence, and he started doing, because the lust is so strong, and to fulfill the demands of lust, he started taking recourse of wrong means to earn livelihood, to earn money. So then he transgressed all the rules and regulations of scriptures. He was living extravagantly, eating food prepared by a prostitute, and in this way committing sin one after another. He was living his life. He did not undergo atonement because of sinful life, and therefore the Yamadutas ascertained in the last verse he is to be punished. So they beautifully describe what dharma is, what adharma is, what are the witnesses, who are the witnesses, and everyone being engaged in these three modes by the fruitive desire is committing sin one after another. And then what was how the downfall of Ajamil happened. So that also they describe in detail to give an understanding of why we are taking Ajamil for punishment, because he is a great sinful person. So they answer the questions of the Vishnu Dutas, and in the next chapter we'll see how Vishnu Dutas will very beautifully establish that your understanding is correct, but it's not the highest. So we will give you something better understanding. So then they start describing what is better understanding. And that I think we'll take next week. So in today's chapter, we saw how Poshanam, the sixth canto, is talking about Poshanam. There are two parts, how Lord is giving Poshanam to devotees also, and those who get entangled in this world. Examples of Ajamil, Indra, Chitraketu Maharaj. And then there are two sections. The glories of Bhakti are highlighted. So first three chapters, story of Ajamil. And in the second part of this canto, there's a further description of progeny, especially of Daksha, and how he got married and he progenited the world. And in that, the pastime of Chitraketu Maharaj, who became Vritrasur, etc. Diti pastimes are mentioned. And then we saw the first chapter, how first section, Parikshit Maharaj is congratulating expressing gratitude for what he has heard till now, and then he is expressing his concern, compassion for people who are about to suffer. And in response, um, Shukdev Goswami test Parikshit Maharaj by telling the Karma Kanda way, then Jnana Kanda way. But Parikshit Maharaj, being a sincere student, he rejects those ideas and then he accepts the Bhakti principle, the highest. And to explain that, he gives the story of Ajamil, and where we saw how his life got degraded, and at the end, fag end of his life, he chanted the name of Narayan. Vishnudutas, the Yamadutas have come to take him punished, but Vishnudutas stopped, and this conversation has started where what is dharma, what is adharma, how you are certain who has to be given punishment, and what punishment has to be given. So, in the answer to that, in detail, Yamadutas explain these aspects. Hare Krishna. So I think we will conclude here if no one has any discussion points. Thank you very much for your kind participation, patient hearing. Shrimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.